before you begin, subscribe to the channel to help engage our channel and thus help support our nonprofit social project where I help people with mental health and self-esteem issues. Have you ever found yourself feeling drained after a conversation with someone? As if, instead of a simple chat, you had just run an emotional marathon? The problem is that often we only realize this when the damage has already been done. The worst? Some of these people are part of our daily lives. A co-worker, a longtime friend, or even a family member. And what do you do when you are trapped in a web of negativity without even realizing it? The truth is that the world is full of difficult people, but that does not mean that we need to be held hostage by them. What few people know is that there is a strategic way to identify these people and protect yourself without having to get into unnecessary conflicts. The secret is to learn to recognize behavior patterns and, more importantly, to know how to react intelligently. After all, running away isn't always the best solution, and confronting someone head-on can be even worse. If you've ever been in a situation where you felt like you were always being belittled, manipulated, or simply emotionally drained, this content is for you. We'll explore the different types of toxicity, understand their roots, and, most importantly, learn practical techniques to deal with these situations. Because, at the end of the day, the best weapon against toxic people is not confrontation, but rather the right strategy. Knowing how to recognize a toxic person goes far beyond simply pointing out someone who irritates you. It's one thing to deal with occasional negative behavior. After all, everyone has bad days, and quite another to live with someone who systematically spreads negative energy, devalues others, or creates a tense environment. Think about that colleague who always downplays your achievements, or the friend who only seeks you out when they need you. These constant patterns are a warning sign. The big trick here is to differentiate isolated attitudes from behavior that repeats itself like a bad movie script. Not every demanding boss, for example, is toxic. There is a difference between professional pressure and emotional abuse. Firm leadership can be uncomfortable, but if it is based on respect, development, and fairness, it is far from being a problem. The problem arises when there is humiliation, manipulation, or an incessant search for control. Have you ever seen a leader who uses fear to command? Or one who makes a point of highlighting your mistakes and ignoring your successes? This is a clear sign of toxicity. The challenge lies in how to react to these people without playing into their hands. Ignoring small, nasty comments may be a way out, but what about when coexistence is unavoidable? The key is observation and strategic distancing. Sometimes, changing the way you react can be more powerful than trying to change the other person. And here comes the big question. What really makes someone act this way? Toxicity can have many faces, and understanding its origins can help you better deal with each type. Some people become toxic because of insecurity, others because of accumulated resentment, and some simply have never learned to relate in a healthy way. There are those who exclude others, always making a point of putting someone down to feel superior. Have you ever been in a conversation circle where someone makes derogatory jokes disguised as a joke? This is a classic example of exclusionary behavior. Others are unethical, disregarding any principle to achieve their goals. The typical colleague who takes credit for your work, or that friend who only shows up when they need something. These people don't think twice before breaking social rules, and dealing with them requires firmness and well-defined boundaries. There are also manipulators who play with other people's emotions to get what they want. They create false stories, distort facts, and make you doubt even your own memory. Have you heard of gaslighting? Well, that's one of their favorite weapons. And finally, there are those who intentionally abuse, being aggressive and intimidating. These people generally know exactly what they're doing and constantly test your limits. The problem is that we don't always notice the abuse right away, and when we do, we're already emotionally exhausted. The worst mistake is to believe that it's just a person's way and try to ignore it. But before cutting ties, is there a way to resolve this without resorting to direct confrontation? We live in an era in which the word toxic has become a label for anyone with whom we disagree. But does every disagreement mean that someone is truly harmful? Before cutting ties, it is essential to differentiate natural conflicts from relationships that actually harm us. Not all confrontation is bad. On the contrary, it is often the clash of ideas that the greatest learning emerges. The question is, How can we disagree without turning everything into a war? A good strategy is nonviolent communication, which consists of expressing what you feel without attacking the other person. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try something like, "When I feel like I'm not being heard, I get frustrated." It seems simple, but this approach reduces the chances of automatic defense and opens space for dialogue. In the case of manipulative or aggressive people, establishing clear limits is also essential. Phrases like, "I'd rather not talk about that right now," or "I don't feel comfortable with that kind of comment," help to command respect without creating unnecessary tension. Of course, there are times when talking is not enough, and distancing yourself becomes inevitable. But before making that decision, it is worth testing different approaches. Often, the way we position ourselves can completely change the dynamics of the relationship. After all, if we know how to deal with communication challenges, we can transform even the most tense situations into opportunities for growth. What if it were possible to use this skill to improve all areas of your life? Now that you know how to identify toxic people and have tools to deal with them, the big question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to allow your energy to be drained, or will you act to protect your peace? The choice is yours. What can you change today to strengthen your boundaries and avoid being sucked into exhausting relationships? Small changes in the way you communicate and position yourself can already make a huge difference in your day-to-day life. And remember, the solution is not always to cut ties. Often, a well-conducted conversation can transform a relationship and prevent small conflicts from becoming unnecessary wars. But to do this, you need strategy, emotional intelligence, and, above all, courage to command respect without having to shout for it. Have you ever tried to change the way you react to these situations? The results may surprise you. If this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you will continue learning about how to deal with emotional challenges, improve your relationships, and strengthen yourself in any situation. After all, the more you understand about human behavior, the more control you have over your own life. Are you ready to take the next step?